So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kate Kunkel, and I am a brain health mentor and the creator of Brain Health Matters, which is a series of educational events, programs, and courses all designed to help you improve your health so you can improve your brain. And today I'm so excited because Sheri and I have been working for a year or so to get together and to do something together. So I'm so delighted to be chatting with Dr. Sheri Elle Brown. Welcome, Sheri.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
So Dr. Sheri holds a Bachelor of Science in Cell Biology and Genetics, a Master of Science in Health Education, and a PhD in Psychology. She's passionate about helping empower individuals to take charge of their health and well-being and provide them with the tools and hope they need to create healing and balance within body, mind, and soul. Sheri, that's an excellent goal, I must say. And today, part of that goal, we'll be talking about epigenetics, one of my favorite topics in the world. I'm so excited that you can do this, but many people may not be familiar with what epigenetics means. Can you tell us, please?
So in short, epigenetics is it's not just a concept, it's a science-backed fact that we can, with our environment, with our mindset, with our behaviors, we can alter the expression of our genes. So even though we have a genetic blueprint, that stays the same. But what we can do to shift the expression actually really does happen. With what we eat, what we think, what we believe.
Right. So for people, because obviously this topic about dementia, we know that there are at least two genetic strains or tweaks that can turn into Alzheimer's, that can make us more likely to develop Alzheimer's. Do you know what they are? I know one is APOE4, but that's the only one I'm familiar with.
Absolutely, that is more your specialty than mine. So
Okay.
I don't know that other specific genetic trait.
I do know that there are two, APO3 and APOE4, but and one is more about early onset Alzheimer's, and the 4 is where you get it a little bit, like it's more likely to get it later. I do know that I'm not sure of the exact mechanism, why it happens or where those come from. I know that if you have one from one parent, it's not as troublesome or likely as if you have it from both parents. I do know that. Right. But the bottom line is we don't have to pay any attention to those, do we, except to be careful of them?
I think that we really don't. There are, according to Bruce Lipton, who is an amazing, wonderful cell biologist and one of my heroes, probably about 2% of the genome, of the human genome, has a genetic component that likely is not changeable. However, that means that 98% is. Yes. So we really, and this kind of goes into that concept of mindfulness and mindset where even there's not even a point in thinking about or obsessing about being in that 2% population, because there still are things that everyone can do to shift the expression of their DNA.
I agree 100%. So let's talk about some of those ways we can do that, because what I really love to dig into here is actual things that people can use right away so that they don't have to contend with this, because once you get it, it's a lot harder to reverse than to just keep it at bay. So what are your thoughts about programmed beliefs? I'm going to tell you a little story just to set it up for why I want this question. My uncles and my father were young children during the end of the Second World War in Germany. And between the Russians coming from one side and the Americans and the English and everybody coming from the other side, It was the perfect storm of hatred and retribution that was exacted against the German people. So my uncles, who were very young, and my father experienced some pretty horrific stuff at the hands of their so-called liberators. So they have a lot of baggage, like a lot of baggage. And they have certain beliefs about things, about what will happen no matter what, because of those. I think it's because of those experiences. How can we counteract something like that? Because I would really love to be able to help them.
Well, I think that that's a very multifaceted answer to a really, really big question. So what I hear you saying is, and if your uncle and your dad experienced this as very young children, at the age of around 6 or 7, we begin our subconscious programming in the deeper part of our psyche. So we end up as children, all of us do, and some of us that experience severe trauma and stress, which is actually another factor in shifting your epigenetic expression. Trauma and stress are two really big components. And so it's absolutely possible to undo some of that early subconscious programming in the deeper part of our brain.
So if we got perhaps psychological counseling or
Right.
that sort of thing. Yeah, because I can see as they're getting older, like my dad's the oldest, he's 83 now, how the events that happened back then seem to be, and he has dementia, vascular dementia from strokes. It's just very early stages, and we're doing our best to stave it off as long as we can. But I can see those trauma events coming and rising from the dementia. Like it was held back before, but now with this dementia showing its head, it seems to be showing more. So I'm thinking with what you're saying with epigenetics, even though or in trauma, we can do things to turn that around, because so many people, I mean, they're just one small portion of the population that has all kinds of trauma.
Right.
And it can have a huge effect on whether or not we develop dementia, even without the gene.
Right.
Right. Another question was, and you had this, how mindful breathing, because I think that comes with stress reduction and so forth. Tell us about your ideas about mindful breathing and not expressing these dangerous genes.
Mindful breathing is a part of really almost a package of prevention. So there are, going back to your initial question, there are a lot of tools that we can use to create or maximize a very healthy physical way of being in the world, our mindset way of being in the world, the spiritual aspect. And mindful breathing is just a part of that. It absolutely, and it goes hand in hand with mindfulness-based stress reduction. Stress is really a prominent component in brain health and overall body health, and it can be severely damaging because we have our gut health barrier, and we actually have a blood-brain barrier, right? And I know that you know that. So mindful breathing not only immediately is a source for stress management in any kind of a situation. So it could be a conversation that you don't want to have. It could be a belief that is making you uncomfortable. Literally, in a given moment, you can take a very deep breath and let it go. And just one breath immediately gives the body relief. The other aspect, and I know that you know this as a brain health person, the other aspect is that mindful breathing really heals the vagus nerve, which is one of our cranial nerves in the brain. And it absolutely, mindful breathing and meditation can bring the vagus nerve not only into a calmer state, right, in our autonomic nervous system, our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, it also can help you can tonify the vagus nerve. So when you experience stress in a future event, you may not respond to it the same way.
Oh, so it's
So
like
it
a,
actually tonifies the vagus nerve for future stressful events, because we have them.
yeah. So you can actually like train it, put it in training.
You can put your vagus nerve in training. Absolutely.
Wow. So just one single breath, or maybe circular breathing, something like that, to get that settled down. Wow. Okay. I never thought of it that way. I mean, I know a fair amount about the vagus nerve, but I never thought about putting it in training. Like I know how to deal with it at the moment, but to make it so that it carries on, that's a really interesting point. So now how do you figure out like which thoughts and emotions might trigger genetics that could cause damage? And that's not just Alzheimer's, right? That's cancer or whatever. We supposedly have the cancer gene too. And how do you track down what you can, or what would you be your ideal for somebody who's concerned about this or may have been tested? What would be the ways you would, besides breathing, other things that you would suggest to people, your clients, to not let that gene take over?
No matter what, I believe that when someone is diagnosed with something and it's coming from a Western medical model, that conversation, when an individual, when any human being is introduced to the idea of, oh, you came up with this test, you have this genetic predisposition, you are going to be sick, it's a really loaded statement coming from a doctor. It just is. And there's a lot of health psychology wrapped up in that. And so to me, it goes back to that initial mindset, to really give yourself the opportunity and the space to put a diagnosis or predisposition into perspective. It really begins with allowing yourself to have the time to wrap your mind around what's happening. And then, in my mind, that the next step is to get outside of that Western medical mindset and start looking at that alternative. And so epigenetics is definitely a science-based branch of science, but there's a little more, on a different level, there's a little bit more energetic, esoteric sentiment, I suppose you could say, involved in that.
So
And so and I think what I'd like to say, Kate, is that having a mindset where you can feel empowered is the beginning first step.
there you go. So, and here's the $64,000 question. How do you achieve that mindset? Like I'm trying to imagine me after my mom was diagnosed with dementia. I was having all kinds of memory and stress issues. If I had gone to a doctor, which I very rarely do, if I'd gone to a doctor and he had said, oh, you have the same gene as your mother, I would have probably gone into a tailspin back then. Now, not so much. Right. But what would you say to someone like me who just heard that news? How would you set that mindset so you don't freak? Like, how do you even begin to do it before you start getting tested? What would you suggest?
I would suggest making sure, number one, don't hop on the internet and start Googling all the terrible bad things that you may or may not experience. And then once you wrap your mind around what is going on, really begin to look at alternative medicine, holistic medicine. There's an entire branch of alternative methodologies and healing that really matter. And, I know that we're limited on time, but I would take a deep dive into my body and into diet. I would definitely think about looking into thoughts and emotions, those deeper sponsoring beliefs of what you don't need to hold on to. And the element of, what you can invite into your consciousness to shift what's happening in your body.
So you don't, and I think this is a problem maybe with a little bit of Western medicine, certainly when it comes to cancer, but also with Alzheimer's. Right away, the the impulse is to hand out a pill,
Right.
and you knee jerk reaction. Oh my God, I have to do that because the doctor said so, without even really having a moment. So you would suggest to someone just take a moment.
Take a moment and don't
Don't freak.
there are many, in all of the years that I was teaching at university or teaching in general, I always used to tell my students there are so many ways to look at one problem.
Mm.
And the bottom line is that, and I'm saying this very carefully, we all have hurdles that we overcome in our lives, and they come to us for various reasons. And it really can be an opportunity for amazing growth, amazing in self realization and introspection. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be turned into a little bit of a gift, because really we're here to elevate our consciousness and become much more self-aware and just all around better human beings. And when we learn to eat a great healthy diet, when we learn to think very clear, lovely thoughts that are not ego driven or out of balance or filled with anger, and when we get to know ourselves in a much more authentic way, we're creating a different energy and vibration. It reminds me of the video you posted the other day with the angry bear and the harp player, right? I mean, and so really it's really opening yourself up to the possibility that food has a healing vibration, thoughts have a healing vibration, music, sense, overall sounds, relationships, everything at the end of the day is energy. And when we shift our energy, we are shifting the energy of what our cells are doing. Yeah. And I mean, I
That
could talk much more about the physiology of that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
and that I think is probably one of the best explanations I've ever had for epigenetics, dealing, how to, I'm not saying conquer genes, but to put the whole picture together, because they're one small part. Your thoughts, your food, all of those things make this big circle, and whether or not we become ill, whether we become well.
Right.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. Now, if somebody were to come to you and just say, look, I don't know if I have the gene or not. I don't want to know because I'm scared. Um, what would you start with? Would you start with diet? Would you start with mindset? Where would you start? So that I know that there are going to be a lot of people. I just had somebody join the group who says, I was diagnosed with dementia, early dementia. And of course, my immediate thing is I say, go to the diet. But what would you say?
I think that the mindset is really an umbrella over diet, over reconnecting with your body in a different way, right? So and then, talking about the emotional aspect, the mental aspect, and then the deeper spiritual aspect, right? And so with all of my academic credentials, I've been meditating for 25 years, right? And so to me, that spiritual aspect is equally as important. I look at mindset as a way to really learn how to treat yourself well,
Mm,
and really learn how to become more self-aware, more aware of the food you're putting in your body, more aware of the thoughts that you're thinking. It's really a big crash course in self-awareness. And out of that self-awareness, we create a mindset around the foods that we eat. So, and I think reconnecting with the body and really listening to the body matters. And I'll give you a small example. I'll try to make it short. So I tend to follow the ketogenic diet. I eat a high-fat diet. I was diagnosed with MS 5-ish years ago. And fat, as you know, is great for our brains. And so, but because I'm very connected to my body, and in my meditation, I do a body scan every day. How are my feet? How are my legs? What are my hips telling me? What are my knees telling me? What is my heart telling me? What is my belly and my throat telling me? So I go through that body scan, or I might do a chakra meditation in that same way on an energetic level. The point is that I can tell now, because I'm very connected to my body, if my adrenals feel stress from high fat and not enough carbohydrates. So sometimes I'll dip out of my ketogenic diet and eat, more root vegetables. I don't go crazy. I don't do bad things.
Yeah.
Bad things.
No donuts. No donuts.
Yeah, no, don't. I don't do that. But if I feel like my adrenals are telling me we're feeling a little stressed out, where's our quick carbohydrate energy, then I can make that shift. So for me, to answer your question, mindset is the overarching umbrella to body, mind, and soul. And then I would definitely start with diet. You have to start with diet. Most people eat bad things and they don't even know that they're bad.
I agree that I 100%. Yeah. It seems that it's very easy to blame things on genetics or on the environment or whatever, or on the food companies or the pharmaceutical, but ultimately we make those decisions, and without the mindset, then really we can't make those good decisions. We have a couple of viewers here. If you guys have any questions, I welcome you to put your hand up or to write a little note in the chat, and I'll make sure to address any questions you might have. In the meantime, I want to touch on what Sheri has to offer us for being here and listening to her wisdom. She has a gift. Tell us about it, Sheri.
So I made actually just a single spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, a single printout of information regarding how you can just take the beginning steps to shift your mindset and create kind of an epigenetic healing pathway or preventative pathway, really. So, for me, you can pop it on your refrigerator, fold it up and keep it in your pocket or your purse. And, you've got these handy little tips to get going. And I do want to say one thing, we all know in the health and wellness field that transformation happens in incremental steps, and everything cannot be done at once. So the mindset really should never be, oh my God, this is happening and I've got to make all of these changes and I'm overwhelmed and I can't do it. It's critical to love who you are, love your body, love that essence, and you're just nurturing all of it one baby step at a time. To me, that's a real critical pathway for success.
Oh, I love that, Sheri. Thank you so much. I always say to my clients, anything you do is better than nothing, and everything you do is something.
Right.
So that's all we can do, right? We're just human beings doing the best we can. Right. Sheri, this has been wonderful. It's been such an education for me too. I'm so glad we got together. Thank you. You're so welcome. And we're going to do something else. We're going to have to do a retreat where we can have a bunch of people get more deep into the information you have to share, because I think this is really critical for all kinds of health, but especially the brain. So I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John and Rochelle, for joining us. Thank you. Bye.